Good evening, and welcome to Scotland at 7 on Broadcasting Scotland. I'm Andrew Wilson, and tonight I'm presenting our news from Edinburgh. First, there is the coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 1,849,993 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 1,628,847 have been confirmed negative, and 221,146 have tested positive. There are 364 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. Not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. There was one new reported death of someone who had tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by coronavirus COVID-19 infection now stands at 7,620. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 174 were in hospital last night, 21 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. today, 2,608,831 people had received their first dose of the COVID vaccination, and 500,376 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show 126,980 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness. That's an increase of 53 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just hospitals. Today there's a National Registers of Scotland update. As at 4th April 2021, 9,997 deaths have been registered in Scotland where the novel coronavirus COVID-19 was mentioned on the death certificate, according to statistics published by National Records of Scotland today. In the week 29 March to 4 April, 38 deaths were registered that mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate. That is a decrease of 24 deaths from the previous week. There were fewer registrations than usual this week due to the public holiday on Friday 2nd April, when most registration offices were closed. Death registrations are likely to have been lower than the actual number of deaths that occurred in that week. The majority of deaths occurred in hospitals, representing 29 deaths, with 5 deaths at home or in non-institutional settings, and 4 deaths in care homes. 47% of deaths were people aged 75 and over, representing 18 deaths, and 8 deaths were people aged under 65. There is an Office for National Statistics update too. The percentage of people testing positive for COVID-19 has decreased in England and has likely decreased in Scotland. The trend is uncertain in Wales, and there are early signs of an increase in Northern Ireland for the week ending 27 March 2021. The signs of an increase in the hospital admissions rate in England continued to decrease in the latest week ending 28 March 2021. The number of registered deaths involving COVID-19 in England and Wales decreased for the week ending 26 March 2021. The number of all deaths registered in England and Wales in the week ending 26 March 2021 was 10,045. Of those deaths, 7.2%, that's 719 people, mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, a decrease from the previous week. The total number of deaths registered was 5% lower than the 5-year average. In February 2021, COVID-19 was the leading cause of death in both England and in Wales. Turning now to the Holyrood election, the latest polling suggests the SNP are on course for an outright majority. A new opinion poll for Sky News is showing the SNP on course to win an outright majority at the Holyrood elections on May 6th, with 53% of the constituency and 44% of the regional vote, with Conservatives on 21% constituency and 22% list, and Labour on 18% constituency and 17% on the list. Alex Salmond's Alba party would fail to win a single seat, receiving only 2% from this poll. Nicola Sturgeon retains her popularity with a net approval rating of +23, while Scottish Labour leader Anas Sarwar has seen a significant boost to his personal ratings at +10. Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross has a net approval rating of -31, while Alex Salmond has a net approval rating of -60 in this poll. A question about the possibility of a coalition between the SNP and the Alba party found that only 15% thought that this would be good for Scotland, while 63% thought it would be bad. The polling suggests the SNP could win as many as 71 seats, giving them an overall majority of 13 in the next Holyrood Parliament. The SNP's deputy leader said that he was not taking the results for granted, and he called for people who support Scottish independence to turn out and vote for the SNP on both the constituency and regional list votes on May the 6th. With 4 weeks to go until the election, SNP leader Nicola Sturgeon has stated today that an SNP government will provide free school breakfasts and lunches to every primary school child. And both breakfast and lunches will be made available all year round, ending the holiday gap that left too many children hungry and increasing the saving to families to an estimated £650 per child per year. Ms Sturgeon also unveiled plans to pilot free nutritious school breakfast in secondary schools, which could see universal breakfast provision rolled out for older pupils. During the pandemic, the SNP government has provided additional help to low-income families, providing free school meals and holidays and additional income through 2 £100 pandemic payments. In other Scottish election news, the Scottish Greens have called for a secure future for oil and gas workers. Scottish Greens have called for a just transition away from oil and gas to begin now, to tackle the climate emergency and to secure the future of communities. In a visit to the North East, co-leader Patrick Harvie called for subsidies to be shifted away from fossil fuels and reinvested in low-carbon alternatives like renewable energy. Commenting, Patrick Harvie said that the UK government is absolutely reckless in its decision to invest further public subsidy in the exploration of new oil and gas. Mr Harvie said that we are witnessing climate breakdown all across the planet, so we do not have time to ignore the problem. He said that the facts are clear. There's far more oil and gas in known reserves than the world can afford to use. He said that if we care about our own survival and about the rest of the living world around us, we need to leave it in the ground. Scottish Greens co-leader emphasised that workers need certainty and alternative jobs and not being left dependent on a dying industry. Mr Harvie went on to say, other parties have suggested that a transition is underway, but you can't call it a transition if you keep throwing money at an industry until it closes. Our future and the future of jobs depends on starting the transition to low-carbon alternatives now, so we don't repeat the mistakes seen in our mining communities at Ravenscraig or in Silicon Glen. During an interview on Good Morning Scotland today, Scottish Tory leader Douglas Ross said he was not sure Boris Johnson would be coming to Scotland to campaign because of the pandemic, despite the Prime Minister having visited Scotland at the height of the second wave in February 2020. His comments came in the wake of last night's Scottish Conservative Party political broadcast, which was headed up by Baroness Davidson, with Mr Ross playing only a supporting role from the touchline, raising further questions about the Tory party's faith in Douglas Ross's leadership. The SNP, meanwhile, has pledged to give renters more protection from unreasonable rent hikes by empowering local authorities to cap rents and to help young people looking for permanent homes in rural areas. The rented sector strategy will set out how tenants will be provided with greater protections from unreasonable rent increases by enabling local authorities to apply a rent cap in pressured areas, giving people affordable choices when renting. A re-elected SNP government will also seek to improve accessibility, affordability and standards and conduct a review of student accommodation. As part of the SNP's Housing to 2040 strategy, a tenant participation panel for the private rented sector will put tenants at the heart of decisions around their property, such as improving standards and services. The SNP have said that they will also set out plans to ensure young people, particularly in rural areas, have the opportunity to buy or rent a home. This will be achieved by enabling local authorities, where pressure on housing is high and there are large numbers of second homes, to take steps to protect housing for permanent residents who will live and work in their communities. The SNP's plan will also review the additional dwelling supplement and additional tax paid on second homes to ensure it operates in a way that supports the provision of homes for people to live in. Meanwhile, Northern Ireland's power sharing executive is holding an emergency meeting in Stormont after another night of riots scarred parts of Belfast and ratcheted up the political crisis. Simon Byrne, the Chief Constable of the Police Service of Northern Ireland, briefed party leaders on the security situation before a debate at the Assembly today, which has been recalled from its Easter break. There were reports that loyalists are planning fresh protests this weekend, a prospect that will alarm the British and Irish governments. Arlene Foster, the First Minister and Democratic Unionist Party leader, spoke with Byrne, marking a sharp turnaround from her refusal to meet him earlier this week, despite the escalating violence. The DUP has demanded the Chief Constable's resignation over policing of Republican funerals, but Foster did not repeat that demand in a tweet after the meeting. She condemned the violence as unjustified and unjustifiable, saying, "Those responsible must be subject to the full rigour of the law." 7 police officers were injured on Wednesday night when masked youths in the Loyalist Shankill Road area hurled petrol bombs and rocks and sent a burning empty bus careering down the street. Kevin Scott, a Belfast Telegraph photographer, was assaulted and his camera equipment was smashed. Youths on the adjacent Nationalist Springfield Road hurled missiles over a peace wall onto the Loyalist side, triggering a fusillade in response. Mobs skirmished when one of the gates in the peace wall was prized open and set alight. At least 55 police officers have been wounded during 7 consecutive nights of disturbances, with trouble switching between Belfast, Derry, Newton Abbey and Carrickfergus. Critics have accused the DUP of stoking the controversy to deflect loyalist anger over the party's role in the creation of a trade border down the Irish Sea. Northern Ireland's Justice Minister, Naomi Long of the Alliance Party, said dishonesty over Brexit had fuelled this resentment. Youths interviewed during protests in Newton Abbey and on the Shankill Road on Thursday cited the sea border, alleged police bias, and a sense that Protestants had become second-class citizens as the reasons that they were carrying rocks and bottles. In some cases, older men appeared to be directing them, but it is still unclear if major paramilitary groups were involved. Ireland's Foreign Minister Simon Coveney said political leaders needed to come together to cool tensions. Elsewhere, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel told Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday to pull back the Kremlin's military buildup near the border with Ukraine, while he in turn accused Kiev of provocative actions in the conflict region. Ukraine has raised the alarm over an increase in Russian forces near its eastern border, as violence has risen along the line of contact, separating its troops from Russia-backed separatists in its Donbass region. The Chancellor demanded that this build-up be unwound in order to de-escalate the situation, Germany's government said in a readout of a telephone call between Merkel and Putin. Russia has said its forces posed no threat and were defensive, but that they would stay there as long as Moscow saw fit. A senior Kremlin official said on Thursday that Moscow could, under certain circumstances, be forced to defend its citizens in Donbass, and that major hostilities could mark the beginning of the end of Ukraine as a country. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky flew to eastern Donbass today in a show of support, 2 days after he called for a path for Ukraine to join NATO, a proposal that is fiercely opposed by the Kremlin. The ruble hit a 5-month low yesterday after Russia said it had begun a planned inspection of its army's combat readiness involving thousands of drills. Ukraine and Western countries say Donbass separatists have been armed, led, funded and aided by Russians. Moscow has denied interfering. While a ceasefire halted full-scale warfare in 2015, sporadic fighting has never ceased. In the United States, President Joe Biden today unveils his administration's first steps to curb gun violence, including a plan to reduce the proliferation of ghost guns, after a slew of mass shootings have put pressure on him to act. President Biden will announce that the Justice Department intends to issue a proposed rule within 30 days to help reduce the increasing prevalence of untraceable, self-assembled ghost guns, a White House official told reporters. The Justice Department will also issue proposed rules within 60 days that make clear that devices marketed as stabilizing braces that effectively turn pistols into rifles will be subject to the National Firearms Act, which requires the registration of firearms, the official said. Other measures include investment in community violence prevention, the planned release of a model red flag law that states can use to draft their own versions, and plans for a Justice Department report on arms trafficking. Red flag laws allow courts and local law enforcement to remove guns from people deemed a risk to communities. Gun control is a divisive issue in the United States, which has experienced a significant number of deadly mass shootings at schools and other public venues for decades. The US Constitution's Second Amendment protects the right to bear arms. The Biden administration has been working on gun control measures for months that would limit gun violence without starting a legal battle that could lead courts quickly dismantling the policies. Recent mass shootings in Georgia and Colorado have put pressure on the White House to act on its own, but legislation is not likely to pass swiftly through Congress. Meanwhile, the SNP has condemned the Tory government for remaining wedded to the obscene two-child policy and rape clause, in the wake of a new report showing the policy has negatively impacted 350,000 families and 1.25 million children in the 4 years since it was imposed. The report by the Child Poverty Action Group, published today, also found the impact of the two-child limit on families has been compounded by other Tory cuts to Social Security, including benefit freezes and the benefit cap. The Child Poverty Action Group analysis shows that before COVID-19, £36 billion per year had been cut from Social Security as a result of Tory policies since 2010. Since April 2017, parents having a third or subsequent child are no longer eligible for support through child tax credit and universal credit if they need it. The support is worth up to £2,830 per child per year. The policy includes a controversial caveat, the rape clause, meaning that in order to claim for third or subsequent children conceived through rape, women must make a declaration to the DWP reliving previous trauma. Commenting, the SNP Shadow Chancellor Alison Thewlis MP said, "The Tory government has pushed millions of people into poverty with its barbaric cuts to Social Security. It's obscene that they remain so wedded to the two-child cap and rape clause, despite the overwhelming evidence of the damage it is doing to our society. It must be scrapped." That's the news for this evening. Thank you for watching this. We are in the midst of a crowdfunder to support the programmes that Broadcasting Scotland makes and which we would like to make more of. So please donate or subscribe if you are able to help us. We are also very keen to encourage anyone who would like to volunteer to assist us, working either in front of or behind the cameras, to make contact with us and to volunteer and to take part. Meanwhile, for this evening, thank you for watching and have a very good evening.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes?
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
Are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.